What you personally do depends on how motivated your research makes you. I've got my opinions, but I hope I've made it clear through this whole thing that I think you should form your own with conscientious, self-critical effort. And I want to avoid a repeat of President Carter's famous sweater speech where he asked for more sacrifice than people were willing to make, and thus his call to action was dismissed, with the net effect of his cause losing ground instead of gaining it. So how about I suggest a range of personal actions, from less demanding to more demanding. And once you've mulled it over and done some research and decided how much the threat of global climate change balances against the other demands of your life, you can pick something from the menu. With all of these personal actions, the goal is nothing less than to change our culture, so that a policymaker can't turn around without a constituent saying, "What are we, you, going to do about climate change?" Because the only way to really buy ticket A is with policy changes. That's because the actions required to address this global problem are too big to be borne by the few. The demands must be spread out amongst everybody so that we can make significant changes in our total carbon emissions without asking such great sacrifices from individuals that people will refuse to support the effort. In today's media-saturated world, policymakers will not get too far out ahead of their constituents. They will only make changes when they sense that enough people demand them. And the bigger the change, the greater the clamor must be. So we must enlist our fellow citizens in demanding policy changes. Here are some ways you can help make that happen. First, the easiest. Forward the video, How It All Ends, to everyone you know. A few clicks, and you get back to your life. Next up, forward the video to everyone you know, and then follow up, asking them what they thought and listening sincerely to their answers. Make this part of your thinking, part of your daily mindset, part of your conversations and concerns. Talk to your friends and family and coworkers about this, not on a crusade, but gently as it comes up. Do anything interesting this weekend? Well, I watched this interesting video that got me thinking. You don't need to become an evangelist to have an effect. If we have enough people who just sort of go about with this in their daily lives, then that can change the culture. Because in today's interconnected world, one vote is not just one vote. It can be 10,000. Next up, write to your lawmakers. It's way easier than you think. Handwritten letters are actually best because then the staff member who reads it knows someone actually put time into it, rather than doing a cut and paste job as part of a funded campaign. Those are more likely to get passed up the food chain in the legislative office, the handwritten letters. Next up, and this one is actually the overarching idea of all of the actions, but I'm putting it farther down the list of difficulty because it has the word everything in it, so it might come across as pretty demanding. It seems clear to me that this is the action that will give you the biggest bang for your buck because it multiplies itself. You do everything you can to increase public demand for significant and immediate policy action to combat global climate change. Here's the part that's flexible where you get to fit that to whatever's in your life and get creative with it. Like I said, I know it might sound really demanding because it's got the word everything in it, but really it's the most flexible. You can just sort of carry it around with you, let it sink into everything you do so that anytime you can pull it out, weigh it against the other things demanding your energy and attention at the time, and make a deliberate choice that you can feel good about. Because it doesn't mean you need to be a zealot. It just means being deliberate and making conscious choices about how you spend your time and energy. Sometimes more for this thing, sometimes more for that thing. Because the danger of asking too much of people, or yourself, is that if it's too demanding, they'll just ignore it. This way, it's not something to feel fear and guilt about, because you should be doing more. It's just something to carry around and feel good about, because you're doing as much as you reasonably can. I forget where I heard this, but I often think of it. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Really, this one is a great personal solution. I highly recommend it. Next up, you make changes in your own lifestyle, from small to substantial. Anything from changing your light bulbs to compact fluorescents to weatherizing your home, buying Energy Star endorsed appliances, driving less, driving an economy car or hybrid, driving a biodiesel vehicle, asking your power companies if they offer renewables, and if not, why not? There are a ton of suggestions out there. I'm not going to offer them all. Go find the ones you can get excited about and then talk them up to your friends and family. And my last suggestion is a special one, a radical one. A radical one for those of you who like to spend time online, or like writing letters to the editor, or just feel really agitated about this, like a fire hose that can't be turned off, and you need some direction to point your energy to feel like you're doing something useful. I'm calling for some information warriors. If you're interested, you've got your own video, titled How It All Ends, Your Mission. Perhaps this next story will inspire or agitate you. I've lost count of the number of times I've seen a comment along the lines of this one. First, he is confusing my not understanding with my not giving a crap. If we extinct our own species, then we deserve to be gone. Apathy is a personal choice and an individual liberty, as long as it doesn't impinge on my liberties. But this sort of militant apathy, nothing matters to me and it doesn't matter for you either, bub, is not tolerable. Fine, I think. If you think humanity is a failed experiment, then you're welcome to check out. But don't take me and my kids with you. He doesn't have to care, but he does need to get the hell out of the way of those of us who do care, those of us who want to save our bacon. This guy may never be convinced, but he doesn't have to be. What's necessary is for the rest of us to make a great enough effort that the militant apathetics and the unreachable denialists become irrelevant. We're just going to have to drag them along as dead weight and save them along with the rest of us. If you've been watching this whole time, hopefully you realize this isn't hyperbole. I'm not talking about the end of the species. I'm talking about the end of our standard of living. It's not likely, but it's increasingly feasible. Why take the chance? We just need to overwhelm these people with enough people who are awake and rational so that we can implement sufficient solutions in time. As you decide how much time and energy you want to put into this, I would remind you of my anecdote about driving the tractor I shared with you at the end of Scare Tactics. And the old saying, a stitch in time saves 9, pretty much sums it up. The more you invest now, the less that will be required later. Or the analogy of steering a big ship or changing lanes. The sooner you take action, the less is required of you. But putting it off can end up requiring a huge effort later that could have been avoided. And in a complex system, sometimes a small difference in what we do now can have a huge difference in what's demanded later. The guys who know best how the physical world works have already warned us. The longer we wait to tackle climate change, the harder and more expensive the task will be. Delayed action will increase the risk of adverse environmental effects and will likely incur a greater cost. I would also remind you of the disturbing trend that over the past 30 years of studying the climate, as the science has gotten better, the picture it paints of climate change has only gotten more severe and more imminent. That's a bad trend. One strategy in deciding what's worth your time to do is what I like to think of as choosing your future regrets. We each want to act so that we don't have any regrets, but there are no guarantees about that. So think about what possible regrets your actions today may be setting you up for in the future. Years down the road, assuming you end up in a regrettable situation, would you rather look back and wish you had worked harder to combat global climate change, or that you hadn't worked so hard? Which is the more likely regret for you to have? Which is the more tragic regret? You can probably guess my opinion, but you ask the questions for yourself. I continually do that exercise, and the more I learn about climate change, the harder I work. Kinda sucks. But I've got 2 little kids and I'm not at liberty to quit just because it's hard. In a way, now that I've been exposed to the knowledge, I'm infected with